Joe Schlicklin and I left our overnight camp marked in red on Sweet Briar Reservoir that they called a lake just off I-94 west of Bismarck, North Dakota, and started climbing the North Dakota hills towards Dickinson. The transmission on my 2013 Ram with 275,000 miles was getting worse and worse, pulling the camper trailer up the hills, so we decided to drop off the camper at the red mark about 40 miles east of Dickinson and drive there to look for a new truck. The old Ram ran well without the camper, and it seemed a shame to trade it in when the salesman told me he couldn't possibly sell such a rusty vehicle and it would just be used for parts and scrap metal. But the new Toyota Tundra 4-wheel drive was wonderful, with plenty of power to pull the camper even though it is a V6 that gets decent gas mileage when not pulling the camper. We made it to Hardin, Montana on the Crow Indian Reservation the same day I bought the truck. Hardin is just up I-90 from Custer's Defeat on the Little Bighorn River to Sioux and Cheyenne Indians, location marked in red. The Crow tribe was given a large reservation here because they were allies with the Americans against the Sioux and Cheyenne. We set up our camp at the Bighorn River access site south of Hardin, also marked in red. Our campsite was good, very close to the boats that would take us across the Bighorn River to the main fishing spot behind an island in the river. This Google Maps photo shows our campsite marked in red, not far from the parking lot at 2 boat ramps, where 200 boat trailers park every day to pick up the boats that drift down from upstream. Below that is the boat landing for the Bighorn River Lodge. The area where we did most of our fishing this year was behind the island highlighted yellow, where boats that land at the public landing can't go to. Joe and I landed our boats at the upper end of the island, with substantial difficulty because of strange currents and lower water. The first day I headed downstream to a flat section, highlighted yellow, a half-mile below our camp that was really good last year. Joe also went downstream after we waited behind the upper island, viewing several rises when we first got there, but we had no hookups. There were some PMDs and few caddis hatching and few risers of any size. The river was lower than last year, but wading down was harder due to mucky areas along the shore. I found almost nothing rising at the flats area and saw that Joe had gone back to behind the island. I was able to land a couple of small browns on PMDs below the island and above the flats, with this largest one 12.5 inches. But Joe had returned to behind the island where he found more trout noses popping up, taking tan and dark wing caddis in the bright, warm sun than he's ever seen before. And he caught most of those noses, including 5 rainbows 13 to 16 and 2 browns 17 and 18 inches. Unfortunately, Joe was not comfortable taking pictures by himself in the water. The next day we headed for the hot spot behind the island, but a guy who had waded up from a park boat was dry fly fishing there. Joe was able to push him to get in his boat headed downstream, and we both fished behind the island where I caught this nearly 14-incher and Joe netted this 19-incher with a different photo perspective. Joe was watching large trout cruise by him in the clear water, and one big one grabbed a small trout that Joe was bringing in, and the tippet caught on the large trout's gill plate, so Joe had a brief battle with the big trout. I landed this jumping 19-inch brown, and Joe brought to net 3 13 to 16-inch rainbows, and we each lost some nice fish, all on tan or black caddis. This 20-inch rainbow proved to be the biggest trout landed, as the larger trout I hoped for before dark never materialized due to cool evenings behind the western ridge that blocked the sun early, leaving us shivering in the 52-degree water after 90 to 101-degree days. The next day we took the truck without the camper over to Helena and back to Beaver Creek on the Missouri River, where we didn't catch many fish, but we got some good pictures and video. There were some PMDs floating down under a smoky sky in the evening, and I caught a couple 11 to 12 inchers and missed 3 that were a little bigger, but really didn't suck my fly in. Risers were hard to find, even at dark, and almost non-existent the next morning, so we headed back to the Bighorn. That day on the Bighorn was a little smoky, and the guy who waited without waders from the boat landing was fishing nymphs behind our island, so I did the long wade back down to the flats, where virtually nothing was going on. I was so proud of the little brown I caught on a caddis when I waded back up to the island that I took this picture. Joe remained behind the island where he watched the nymph fishermen net a 22-inch brown in the fast riffles at the top of the run, and the guy asked Joe if he would take a picture, which Joe did. The guy lost another big one up there too. After that, The guy with no waders was shivering so badly that he waded back across to the landing, even though the sun was still above the west ridge. Joe and I each caught some 13 to 16-inch fish behind the island and lost some, but we really didn't get into any bigger ones. The next morning, we took the little boat upstream to the 3-mile boat launch because I caught some nice fish in the circus up here 2 years ago on PMDs. We planned to cross the deep channel at the orange line with Joe hanging off the back to fish the island across from the landing. We saw virtually no PMDs or risers, but 2 boats were running through the deep channel we were going to cross and catching one big fish after another on nymphs. So we went back downstream to get our nymph rigs and went across the channel. We had no luck on our nymph rigs, but both Joe and I saw some caddis risers, so we converted to black caddis dries. I caught this 17-inch in the deep channel we crossed, and Joe had a couple of hits he never touched, and then the caddis quit, so we went back downstream to our camp to fish behind our island. When we went behind the island this last day of fishing, we had it to ourselves. This is the view from Joe's usual spot looking down to the outlet to the main river that looks very much far away and is about a quarter mile down. This is looking upstream from Joe's spot, where I had hooked a nice brown on a caddis and was holding my rod high to keep the fish out of the weeds. The fish was a nice 18-inch brown that I was able to remove some fishing line and a white grub wrapped around its head. Joe hooked a nice one below me, and I was able to get some video of him bringing the brown to the net. It was a nice 18-incher, and Joe called me down to get a picture of one of his fish. I guess I could have zoomed in a little more and tried to get Joe to smile a little, but still a nice fish in the middle of a smoky and hot day. Joe got some video of me hooking a nice rainbow and guiding it into the shallow current on the rocks where I could measure it and take a selfishie picture. The rainbow jumped initially and measured 19 inches. Both Joe and I had lost some nice ones over the few days.
Now what are you gonna
One
do
jumping
with it?
rainbow I lost due to a bad knot may have been over 20 inches. But this one measured 19, very nice for daylight fishing, and all the bigger fish were on caddis. So we packed up the truck and camper the next morning to start the long trek back to Michigan. The return trip went very well to cap off a successful few days of trout fishing in Montana.